Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. I hope you and yours are all well. Nice to be back again. And can I just, before I go any further, a big shout out to all of you we spoke to last Saturday at the Glasgow Green. It was nice to meet so many of you and hear some of the things you were saying. It was really greatly appreciated. And I hope you and yours are well. So let's get everyone in today, although we're missing Lloyd again this week, I'm afraid. So we've got our favourite lawyer, Eva Comrie. In you come, Eva.
Hi, Roddy. Yeah, like you, I had a lovely time last week at All Under One Banner and met a lot of our viewers. So thanks very much for all the kind comments and the sage advice from some of you. So it was lovely to see you all. And thanks again for your support. It's very, very valued.
Indeed, and absolutely. And up there in Brussels, I believe, Mr. Boswell.
Yeah, back in Brussels for the moment, but be obviously again before too long. Who knows where I'm going next? But let's see.
Did you enjoy yourself last weekend?
It was brilliant. It was great. It's good to see. The sad thing is obviously it's the same faces a lot of the time, but it's great. I think someone described it as we keep the pilot light going because we know the majority will be ready to march and to take our country back. But we need leadership and we need a plan that's going to work, and we just need to change out these politicians because they're just not doing it. They are not delivering. And it's horrific to see. And the young people won't get engaged until they see a way forward for us, sadly. And what the politicians are failing us again.
Yeah, I had someone saying to me in the middle of the week, I don't go to these marches, I don't see the point. And they're not, what is the point? I said, our enemies don't. I said, the enemies, never mind the enemies. It's good for people to get together, I'm not alone, and they see these people in marches and they talk to them. And it lets them understand that no matter where we are not alone. We're all there's plenty of us still fighting the fight. Yeah. And one of them is Mr. Petrie up in the City of Discovery. How you doing, Alan?
Not in the City of Discovery today. I am up in Eva's heartland of Stirling.
Good man. You're there for the Freeport meeting?
I'm here for the ISP anniversary.
All right. Well, you got the picnic. Yeah. Don't eat too much now. Don't be eating too much. Anyway, let's get going because we've got a lot of time. As always, the clock will beat us as it does every week. And this week, I'd like to start here, if I may, Eva, because and this was with our First Minister, who said a Holyrood election will only lead to a second independence referendum if the SNP do really well. We don't know what really well means. If you look at the political history of Scotland, things only happen to move when the SNP does really well. The words I want to use there, Eva, is what a load of bloody nonsense. A referendum ain't going to happen ever, and it's not dependent on the SNP doing well.
I don't know whether to laugh or to cry at the ineptitude of this man. Like George Fulks said, they're doing it deliberately. There are no circumstances whereby John Swinney, an intelligent man, actually believes that there will be another Section 30 referendum. It ain't going to happen. The SNP know that's not going to happen. This is just a line for the sheep who think SNP 1 and 2 is going to deliver the goods. It's not possible. Support for independence is beyond 50% in some polls. Support for the SNP is somewhere in the low 30s. Under no circumstances are people who vote SNP1 and SNP2, i.e. constituency and list SNP votes, any closer to bringing independence about than we were long before the 2014 referendum. And when John Swinney says Scotland does well when the SNP does well, what he means is Scotland did well when the SNP did well under competent, inspired, inspirational leadership, which is what we had with Alex Salmond, and it's what we now do not have with John Swinney. All we need is a route map to independence. That's what he has to deliver. He can't deliver a referendum granted through the powers that be in Westminster. And he's aiming for that route because he's making the same old mistake of playing by the British rules when he should be playing by the Scottish rules. And the Scottish rules require that those people who will never vote SNP again, but used to vote SNP and who are dedicated to the cause of independence, are motivated and inspired to vote, which they will be with a campaign of unity. So there will be no referendum. It's off the table forevermore. The only time Westminster will grant a referendum is if we think that they will win and that Scots will vote to stay within the Union. And we don't want that referendum. We want one that's democratically operated and democratically run with a democratic result. And we know full well if we get that, we win.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need that. We need a majority of independents supporting MSPs in the Scottish Parliament. We need a constitutional convention, not a meeting of politicians opposed to the far right, but a meeting of politicians who favour independence and civic leaders who favour independence and significant people within Scotland with knowledge, understanding, experience, vision and ideas and imagination and courage. That's what Scotland needs, not somebody who, to all intents and purposes, is yesterday's man, a caretaker, a very careful pedestrian through Scottish politics who's not going to be doing anything that's remotely earth-changing or world-shattering. None of that does Scotland any good. What we require is leadership, collective leadership, such as that shown by Kenny McCaskill and Colette Walker during the week.
Phil, a Section 30. I mean, there's more chance of Alloa Athletic winning the Champions League next year than a British Prime Minister ever agreeing to a Section 30 referendum. So blatantly, everyone knows that. So John Swinney is blatantly lying to the Scottish public.
He is, and it's not in doubt. It's been stated as much by many a British leader and many a British-focused politician. Labour won't do it. The Reform won't do it. No, these people won't do it. They want to continue the asset stripping of Scotland. And Eva's right. A constitutional convention and critically unification of the Yes movement is what is required, not the current failing SNP strategy. And it's been proven to be a failing strategy. Ever since Nicola was given the keys, the golden keys to the independent nation, she sold us down the river. And this liar continues to do the same, as does the entire leadership of the SNP. A referendum on England's terms is a massive failure to follow the will of the people of Scotland again, the majority of us who now want independence. It's depressing for all of us who know he's lying. And this action will not result in independence. John Swinney knows that. That's why it's called a lie. It's a falsehood he's deliberately putting out there to continue the troughing for he and his mates. And bear in mind, he and the rest of the current SNP leadership are either being blackmailed and or bought and sold for English gold. So they're under the yoke. They are. We know what 77th Brigade operate, how MI5 operate, and these so-called leaders of the independence movement, they're not. They're completely hooked and under the thumb of the British establishment, not to be trusted. What is the answer? Well, I don't know. They've done nothing in 11 years now, and there's no sign of change. In fact, Angus Robertson and the rest of these wasters are still talking about this referendum on England's term and the SNP 1 and 2, completely in the hand of the British establishment. Proven it will fail. It will fail again. They're liars, and they're failing the people of Scotland.
Alan, you don't have to be a mathematician genius to work out that with the D'Hondt system, SNP 1-2 is going to allow, probably, on this occasion, lots of reform nutters in and lots of unionists. We know that. The dogs in the street know that. Surely John Swinney and his entourage know that.
John Swinney knows exactly what he's doing. I mean, what he said was correct at one stage. Because when SNP did really well, Alex Salmond delivered a referendum. but he also delivered a competent government. John hasn't done that. And for the last 10 years, the SNP have been doing really well. What have they done? They delivered a GRA. They delivered the hate crime bill. They deserted the independence movement. And because of that, the independence movement are now moving further and further away from the SNP. That is why we have now got to think outside the box on how to get independence. Because the SNP is no longer the route to independence in this country. They are a hindrance to the movement. That's why we have got to, and to be honest with you, there's not even a lot of people that are going to vote SNP on the constituency, never mind on the list. And for anybody to propose SNP constituency and another independence party on the list is a big mistake. Because if you can't get them out to vote for the constituency vote, they ain't coming out to vote for a list. We need a strategy of having people to vote on the constituency and on the list, but not just with their hearts, with their heads. We've got to use the system. The unionists have been using the system since 1999. It was formed for them to be able to use it to stop us. Let's play the game. Let's play the system, and let's free our country.
Absolutely, Alan, you're bang on, and that's exactly the strategy of we are going to be the Liberate Scotland. That's the ISP and Indie for Indie and others who are joining as independents are going to be fighting constituencies and the list. Because if the SNP won't do what's necessary, then someone has to, and that's exactly what is going to be happening with the Liberate Scotland. And I'm having a wee bit of trouble here with my. There we go. I'm back in the room, because Eva, this was emphasised by something else John Swinney said this week, where no need for a get together. Kenny McCaskill wrote to him a letter asking if he could have a pro-independence convention to talk about things, which was excluding everyone else and the Yes movement. He said, "Nah, we don't need that. We don't need it. It's not necessary. SNP have just got to win the election." It actually proves that is their raison d'etre now, winning elections, nothing else.
I find this quite a curious stance for John Swinney to adopt when you consider that about a year or so ago, the deputy leader of the party, my own MSP, Keith Brown, was talking about a convention. And go back further in time to 2020, Brexit Day, Nicola Sturgeon was talking about a convention. So I do not understand logically why John Swinney would now depart from a position adopted by obviously very, very senior colleagues of his. He's not explained why, and one can therefore only conclude that he is making the mistake that so many politicians make, and that's putting party before country. Yep. There is no other sensible explanation for this, particularly when he's already shown himself to be quite content to organise cross-party meetings and shut out the democratic ambitions of reform. I don't like reform. I'll never vote for them. They're not my cup of tea. Some of their policies and proposals are far too extreme for my liking. But if they're democratically elected, then they have a role to play because the people have voted for them.
Yeah.
Dire though that seems. And the situation that John finds himself in now, and we know that he and his advisors watch Prism, the situation that John is in just now is he's making a fool of himself because every single grassroots member, supporter, voter for the SNP wants a unified campaign. They want independence before anything else. Yeah, they want competent government to encourage naysayers to come to the cause, but they want a campaign for independence on the basis that that is what Scotland needs more urgently than ever. And the way to get it is now not any longer simply to vote SNP, it's to bring people together. So our position within Liberate Scotland, as you know, is to be constructive and to say unequivocally, one member, one candidate supporting independence for the constituency and a concerted effort on the list to maximise the number of independent supporting MSPs in Holyrood. Had that been done in 2021 for the last Holyrood election, Scotland would now be independent. Although it was Alex Salmond's notion, obviously, and part of the founding principles of the Alba Party, I joined Alba for that reason, and I went from being top of the SNP list in Mid-Scotland and Fife to being top of the Alba list in Mid-Scotland and Fife. And if people had voted SNP in the constituency, Alba on the list, I would have been an MSP. And I would have been part of a majority cohort seeking to drive Scotland towards independence as quickly as possible, and we would not now be where we are. But this notion of the supermajority is one that Colette Walker and the Independence for Scotland Party, the ISP, have supported since before Alba came into being. It is understood by people who desire independence that the way to get it and get support for it maximised and get international recognition and come to the attention of the world is to have that majority. And you get that majority not by voting for one party, but by applying your vote sensibly and constructively in both the constituency and the list, and you vote for independent supporting candidates. If the SNP continue along John Swinney's line, where he will not speak to, he will not break bread with, he will not have a powwow with, he will not smoke a pipe of peace with, people who created the party that he now represents. Kenny McCaskill was in the SNP long before John Swinney. He was a minister beside John Swinney. The two of them learned a lot from Alex Salmond, and I'm quite certain John Swinney learned a lot from Kenny McCaskill. John should be burning the rubber off the soles of his training shoes, running to meet Kenny at an appointment to discuss where do we go from here. He's got a year to get it done. That's what he should be doing. The fact that he does not respond positively poo-poos the idea of a pro-independence convention, dismisses the notion that independence supporters can get together and make Scotland a better place collectively, indicates, unfortunately, that he's not country before party, he's party before country, and his reputation will suffer, and history will tell the tale and will not be kind to him, but he's got time to change it. If he wants to be the man who leads Scotland to independence, it begins today by lifting the phone to Kenny. Hello there, got your letter. What are you doing at 5 o'clock? The kettle's on.
Yeah, but it shouldn't just be Kenny. It should be all the leaders. It should be to ISP. It should be to Indie for Indie. It should be to Salvo Liberation. It should be to all under one banner. It should be to everybody who supports independence. The cross-party people we met, the Breadth of Scotland in Glasgow last week, they should be all involved. Because here's the thing, Phil. Kenny, if he's hitched his wagon. It's almost as ridiculous as the SNP's Section 30. He's hoping he'll get a crumb of the table from the SNP. But what happens when John Swinney turns around and says no? Kenny's made his party, and his party have decided to be a list-only party. The electorate will not take that seriously. If you want to be a list-only party and, take second best and second prize, that's not something that's going to enthuse the public of Scotland, is it? We need fighters.
Not unless there's unification. And it was an agreed. I mean, this is all that would have been required, just as Eva has articulated. We would be independent. We would be an independent nation, and we could have had Alba on the list as the second option, with no SNP votes lost to the ridiculous. The system is designed to ensure we remain under the British yoke, and the only way to play this system is to avoid SNP's absolutely stupid strategy of SNP 1 and 2. It should be one party as your first choice and another party or a separate entity as your second. Whether that's Alba, and whether we have to destroy the SNP and make it Alba 1 and Independentistas 2 or whatever. But what we would urge, I can't believe that these leaders of the SNP don't know this. Of course they know this. And I would actually now, we've seen the incompetence under Nicola since she took over right through to today. It's been an unmitigated disaster. One failed leader after another. A party that has failed to build on the impetus and the great reputation that Alex Salmond established, that we established under Alex Salmond. Wasted, ruined. I would now urge abstention from the SNP. That's the best thing you could do for Scotland. Don't show us up. Stop showing us up. Shut your mouths and do what you're told. That's what they should be doing. And I spoke with an SNP MP recently who assured me that John has a plan. We should trust him.
I've heard that one before.
Yeah, well, if this is a cunning plan, then we're doomed until he and the rest of the leadership are forced to face reality. Then and in my opinion, John Swinney and the rest of the SNP leadership's political careers need to be ended. That's what I think. That's the only thing that will work. We need to take them down. And it saddens me to say this, but I honestly believe that they are not for turning. The claws of the state are dug too deep into them. They're being blackmailed or certainly being bought and sold at the very least. So
but that brings me back to my question, Phil, that I directed to you. If that is the case and they don't change, what does that do to Alapa? Because they're then out. They're hung out to dry. It's a hell of a risk they took. They should have applied pressure. They should have got an agreement before they did anything. But they showed their hand completely and absolutely up front, and the SNP will just at the last minute cut the lights from them. They're done. They've killed themselves.
It's a foolish move. I believe it's a foolish move, and there are senior people within Alaba who are questioning and don't understand why Kenny's made this decision to play it this way.
Well, it was actually, in fairness, it wasn't Kenny. It was the what do you call it, conference, but they were fed the line.
Yes, you know how it works at conference.
Yeah.
You know how it works. And so for me to follow this up, I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense unless you have an agreement with the SNP that they will vote, they will push for the same. Because if that would work. So it's a credible theory. That this is the problem. The best lies have a grain of truth, and the reality is that SNP 1 and Alapa 2 could win us our freedom. It could win us our freedom, and that's the reality. The problem is they're not going to do it. Now, one thing when I heard this, Alapa saying this, I thought, okay, there's a bit of credibility here. They're putting themselves forward to say, we're not going to fight you in the first tier, but you should vote for us second. Maybe they're trying to persuade the voters of SNP, not the leadership, because the leadership are gone, in my view. But I just don't think enough of us will get involved, because the voters won't turn out. Look at the turnout. The turnout's been appalling. Why we've been let down, disappointed by the failed strategies that our so-called leaders have put in place, and this is another one. And I just don't understand why Alapa or SNP can be taken seriously at the moment until we get a unified front and a strategy that is clear, that we know what we're going to do, that the people will buy into, and that we trust. And this is not it.
No, it is not. And that's it. The original question, Alan, is that, John's not back any idea of a pro-independence convention. But what we know from last July's general election is that 750,000 yes-supporting people stayed at home. They didn't want to vote SNP, they didn't want to vote Alapa, they didn't want to vote ISP, they didn't want to vote, as Phil alluded to, totally disillusioned with what's going on. But if there's not going to be a pro-independence convention, then Phil's right. We have to remove the roadblock, and the roadblock at the moment is the SNP.
Yeah, and they have been for so long. I mean, if we get a majority at the next election in 2026, when 750,000 of our voters are still staying at home, we aren't getting over 50% of the vote. The international community will laugh at us if we say we want independence. We had 30% of people voting for it. We need a majority. And to do that, we need people to come out. But they need something to come out for. Mm-hmm. And it's quite clear the SNP are not going to get the vote. And if they don't get the vote, Alba's not going to get the vote. Now, the other problem with standing on the list is in order to win elections, you need to have election data. So that's a lot of canvassing. Leafleting doesn't cut it. Nobody ever reads a leaflet and says, I'm voting for that person. They vote for it because of the campaign. And a lot of that campaign is to do with hustings. If you're standing on the list, you do not get invited to hustings. It has to be a constituency candidate that gets invited to hustings. So they have marked themselves out of the entire campaign within local communities. People within local communities will not know what they stand for. So that is a dangerous route to go. And that's why Eye for Eye and Liberate Scotland are going to be standing in both constituencies and the list. Because we need to bring out as much people as possible to vote. Because even if we don't win every single seat, we get as many votes as possible and get us over that 50% mark. Because that is the gold mark. Over 50% plus one, and we have made a democratic decision that our nation wants independence. And that's what our goal is.
That's it, folks. And you out there watching this, you're the people that are going to have to join in and help. It can't be done by us talking in a podcast or the people that are already in Liberate. Now, there will be a list of candidates going out this week and every week for the next several weeks. We're talking to people throughout Scotland who are interested in coming forward, but we need more. There are 73 seats in Scotland. We don't have 73 people yet. And we also need people for the list. So get in touch. But because what we're up against is really Brits everywhere, Eva. Brits absolutely everywhere. And one of the places, Caithness, one of the most remote of the seats that will be getting contested, and hopefully we'll have a Liberate candidate in there as well.
Eva, hi, Hamish Morrison from The National. Sorry to bother you. I'm a reporter with The National. I'm asking about your bid to become the MSP for Caithness.
Yeah, I know you've made inquiries to the National Office.
Are you a paper candidate?
No, I'm not. I wasn't a paper candidate last time. I spent a lot of time in the constituency.
Are you going to move to the constituency if you win?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What's the biggest issue facing Caithness at the moment?
Well, the biggest issue facing Caithness at the moment is the fact that there's a huge issue around the NHS and access to healthcare. Transport issues is absolutely dire up there. So those are the two main issues that I would be campaigning on.
Great. And what do you make of the jokes about you having to fly up there 650 miles away?
I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I am a serious candidate that seriously believes in that area. I have lots of connections to that area.
What are your connections to the area?
I've said that in my literature, and the party have already said that to you.
Can you inform the uninformed?
Yes, of course. I worked for MSPs up there for a really long time. It's where I started my political journey.
There you go, Eva. A serious candidate, or is it just typical of the British Labour Party in Scotland treating voters in Scotland with contempt? It's not a seat that Labour are likely to win, so they parachute in a Lewisham councillor. That's how strong Labour are. They can't even find a Scot to parachute in. They have to bring one up from London. Really?
Yeah, to North Britain, that colony, that outpost. That's all it is the mentality of the conqueror, I suppose. And at the moment, Scotland actually is behaving as if she's been conquered. Scotland's been vanquished because those people with spines and in positions of power are not doing their best to put Scotland back on the world stage again. We've become very supine in terms of our current political leadership, and it really has got to change. What it reminds me of, actually, is I've been in the Palace of Westminster only twice. I hope never to be there again. It was a horrible experience. But the first time I was aged 13 and it was a school trip, and we were shown round by a Labour MP who was a friend of the teacher. It was Harry Ewing, the MP, who showed us round, and it felt like an alien place to me. The voices, the surroundings, the processes, the procedures were just, I felt, completely out of touch with reality, and certainly not in line with the thinking or the priorities or the desires or the ambitions of a wee class of pupils coming from the centre of Scotland. The second time that I was there was in 2023, and nothing had changed. The surroundings had been a bit revamped. There was a cafeteria that hadn't been there before, but everything else was still exactly the same. outmoded, outdated, out of touch, and not somewhere that you want to have any kind of power or control over your own country and your own destiny. So I firmly hope that what we're going to get for next year's Holyrood election are in each area, each constituency, each region, local people with knowledge and ability, understanding, power and vision who really want to take Scotland forward and want to stand as indie for indie candidates if they don't have a genuine independent supporting candidate to vote for. Because this parachuting people in from 600 odd miles away is nothing other than offensive and arrogant, and it just highlights the very authoritarian, dismissive attitude that lies at the heart of the unionist parties. And never forget that that's what Labour is. Labour's job is to prolong the union. You know, there are a lot of Labour voters that support independence for Scotland. I hope that these Scottish Labour voters who understand that there's no such thing as Scottish Labour will find it within themselves to vote for an independence candidate as she. In fact, some of them might want to be indie for indie candidates next year. I hope so.
Yeah, we can hope. And I can't stress you guys enough how out there, how we need your help, we need your support. We cannot, the people who are knocking their pan in every day, believe me, to make this happen, need support from all parts of Scotland. It doesn't matter how little you can do or whatever, we need support. But because if not, Phil, if John Swinney keeps on the way he's going to let in a load of unions, but it's going to be reform. And here is their deputy leader.
Absolutely brilliant. The Russian Nord Stream gas pipeline is 1,400 kilometres long, 3 times the distance from Glasgow to London. This is great, 3 times the distance. How many times could we have installed a huge water pipe to pump water from the huge Scottish lochs since the 1976 heatwave? Again, no forward thinking, no common sense.
There you go. You know, they say, oh, they're coming after our water. There you go. They're coming after our water as well. And you know how much they'll pay for it, Phil?
Hee-haw.
Correct.
Yep, that's just how it is. It's one of the greatest resources we've got, and something like 90% of Britain's water is in Scotland. And in fact, I think it's Loch Ness has got more than all of England and Wales put together.
Correct, absolutely.
And this is fresh water. We're blessed with it. We have mountains. We have fresh water. We could be generating. There's a couple of shovel-ready power projects that we could be building right now, and building to continue to get renewable energy into Scotland. We should be paying nothing for energy. Instead, they're going to build pipelines, which there already exist. There are pipelines already taking this down, but they want bigger ones so that they can continue to asset strip and rape Scotland of its energy and its resources. Yeah, and as for the joke, it's our imperial masters are laughing at us again. You know, that candidate, she has got no chance. And Eva's right. It's a slap in the face that the good folk of Caithness need to respond to. If you vote for independent candidates but from different parties. Do not vote SNP 1 and 2, because this has been proven time and time again that it's a failed strategy. This guy, Richard Tice, okay, he wants these water firms to be under British control, which means the owners and the politicians, that actually own these people, the politicians are owned, right, by the corporations. And bear in mind, Reform UK, this was the Brexit Party. These are the guys, you know, they used to be called the Brexit Party. Reform UK begun its political life as the Brexit Party. And sorry, my phone's going off. It's my mate down there. But remember, they began life as the Brexit Party in 2018, when the whole debate on exit from Europe began. And it was sponsored by the hedge funds. Richard Tice and this party, the Reform UK, are sponsored by the billionaires, and the billionaires want to continue. They brought us Brexit, want to continue asset strip UK and Scotland's prime target, because that's where most of Britain's resources sit. 97% or 96.5% of the oil, 65% of the gas. That's only going to go up, and about 90% of the fresh water. Remember that big list. So he wants wants to end foreign ownership, okay? And he called it the water and power firms and critical British infrastructure to be brought back under British control, i.e. him and his mates, and we get shafted again. Do not trust these chancers.
Correct. So the British are parachuting in candidates from Lewisham, London, to the furthest north constituency, excluding the Shetland Isles, Alan. But we've now got this guy talking about stealing our water, and here's another one. Talking about the Scots getting taken to the cleaners. Scottish Power, who I've mentioned a few times, have tell us in Spain that because of the massive profits they make overseas, e.g. Scotland, they're able to subsidise the electricity prices here in Spain. But they're now investing 600 million, Scottish Power, to take our offshore energy and give it to the English.
Yep, just more of the con. I mean, we have been conned time and time again. And what makes me sick is they're not only going to get this free of charge, we're going to have the privilege of paying for it. Because there's no way that £600 million loan will ever be paid back. So we're paying for our own energy to be stolen from us to then go into the English books for the next Jers release. Again, another con. It's just continuous. But people have got to remember as well that Reform are being elected not because people support them, but because people are not turning out to vote. They're getting on very small percentages of votes. That's very dangerous, especially when we have just entered trade agreements with the United States of America, because our health service will be at risk under these trade agreements. It has not been ring-fenced to be secured. America have been for years desperate to get their hands on our health service, and Reform are just willing to hand it over to them because they have that as top of their Reform agenda, is to destroy our health service. So it'll be the weakest that'll die off, and the rich will just continue and get richer. That's what Reform's all about. But I do feel sorry for the Labour Party in Scotland.
Really?
Because, I mean, their leadership has now just told them, you're all too incompetent to stand for MSPs. So we're going to bring a Londoner up to take a seat for you. Someone who doesn't know Scots law, doesn't know Scottish Constitution, doesn't know Scottish services, because you lot are just useless and not capable of doing this job. Well, we all know that there is a high percentage of Labour voters who support independence. We know that they do not support the SNP because of a lot of the woke policies that the SNP have pushed. Well, in 2026, you will now have a choice. You will have independence. You will have ISP. You will have people who have got independence and nothing less on the ballot paper. There is no excuse now for continuing to support the Labour Party just because you don't like the SNP. The choice is now there for you. Vote independence, nothing less. Forget about
Correct. I mean, down in England, and Reform Party in particular, complaining about economic migrants arriving in dinghies into England and taking up the services and not buying into the culture, etc., etc. Well, our economic migrants arrive across the border in their cars, and they come from England, and they are coming in here for free prescriptions, for free university travel, for free healthcare for the elderly. That's why they're coming here. And we've got the same problems. But we mention that we're racist, we're anti-English. Anyway, here's the way things are going quite fine. Great news from down in Wales. Now, this is something that doesn't happen in Scotland, Eva. The Welsh First Minister, who's a Welsh-born English nationalist, like the rest of them, Labour Party, she's breaking ranks. She's refusing to enforce the disability cuts that Starman says the Welsh Labour Party will not stay silent anymore while this is happening, because it goes against all the, anything that's to do with the so-called Labour movement. But at the same time, me and coincidences, Eva, I don't believe in them. It's broken this week that the Welsh Plaid Cymru are down to win the Senedd election next year. No, that's no coincidence that Labour in Wales are starting to wise up.
Wales has been plundered just as much, if not more, than Scotland for centuries.
Absolutely.
If you read the history of why there's a Prince of Wales, it is actually highly offensive to me, and I have no Welsh connections whatsoever. But the last Prince of Wales who was Welsh was murdered, and in his place was put English Princes of Wales, and that's what you see still happening, obviously, today. It's absolutely pathetic, on a par with the Duke of Edinburgh or the Earl of Rothesay or whatever. However, think how green was my valley, think about Welsh mining, Welsh water, Welsh resources, Welsh people, Welsh labour, and you can see that Wales has just been, like Scotland, a cash cow for Westminster. And the Welsh people know this. And they're turning in their droves to independent supporting parties, Plaid Cymru being the main one at the moment, but there are others. So there's a multiplicity of independent supporting parties and candidates in Wales, and that's only a good thing. But you see, this is proof where it needed that the union is at its weakest that it's probably ever been since, from a Scottish perspective, 1707. We know that the union was not supported by the majority of Scots then, and we know now that it's probably not supported by the majority of Scots. It's clearly becoming to be very much at risk in Wales, and we know there's a different position in respect of Northern Ireland. In Ireland, there will one day be a unity poll, I have no doubt about that, or a border poll. That will happen. Wales looks like they're heading in the direction of eventually looking for a referendum. We up here can do better than that because we can use next year's election for that purpose, if we so desire, and we agree. But the interesting thing is that the union is at its weakest. Independent supporting parties or independence support is on the rise. As you said, this is not a coincidence. The people of Wales have woken up. The people of Scotland have woken up. We just need to do a bit more work, and collectively, with a joint approach, the Scots and the Welsh can destroy the union, and they can give England what England truly and absolutely deserves, and that's England's independence. So I look forward to campaigning for England's independence and to the shattering of the union, because for at least 300 years, the union has benefited England far more than it's ever benefited what the English and those in Westminster would refer to as the satellites, North Britain, West Britain, etc. So good on you, Plaid Cymru. Go for it, Wales. All under one banner happens in Wales regularly throughout the year, and they've had mass turnouts, bigger than ever before. Long may it continue.
Correct, bigger than the turnouts we get. On Welsh water, I remember reading an article a while back where something like 500 million litres or something ridiculous like that of Welsh water goes out into England, and when the Welsh are actually paying more for their water than their water's been paid for in England. It's the same game, it's just a different country, folks, and we've been taken to the absolute cleaners. But Phil, the Labour Party in Wales hitting back a wee bit against London, if only by word only, and complaining. And Plaid Cymru, it looks in the polls to win. It's a joy to see.
It is, and he's got the right message out. I mean, I'd love to be able to pronounce his name, but I've not practiced it long enough. But he said his party ready to form a government in Wales. And when Sky News asked him whether a vote of Plaid Cymru meant a vote for Welsh independence, he wouldn't be drawn on it. So that's a wee bit of an issue. But it comes as a new poll published on Tuesday, put the Welsh Nationalists as the largest party in Wales with 30% of the vote share. Now, that's exactly a year, or Wednesday. It was exactly a year until the next Senate election, when voters in Wales will elect 96 members for the first time, an increase of more than 50% from the current 60. While Plaid have previously been a coalition in government, the party's never formed the biggest group in the Senate yet. But these things are changing, and the Welsh people were waking up to it. And of course, it means independence, and the Welsh people know that. Onto the Scottish Power, the 600 million for the power generated the electricity for the usual price. You were saying This is the UK's National Wealth Fund, right, and several banks that are handing energy firm Scottish Power, owned by whom? Aye, not the Scots, that's for sure. A £1.35 billion loan to upgrade the power grid between Scotland and England. The financial package will help pay for work on several major offshore cabling projects, carrying electricity from wind farms in Scotland to England via the North Sea. Now, the Eastern Green Link EGL project, one will carry electricity from Torness in the southeast of Scotland to Hawthorne Pit substation in County Durham. The other one, the EGL 4, will carry power from Fife to Lincolnshire. Now, we in Scotland should have the cheapest energy in Europe, and we, the people, should be making a fortune by selling our power to England and other neighbours via something called interconnectors. Now, interconnectors are structures that enable high voltage DC electricity to flow between electrical grids. They're high voltage land and subsea cables that connect the electricity systems, or national grids, we would call it, of neighbouring countries, allowing surplus clean energy to be traded and shared. So when the wind's blowing in Germany but not blowing in England, you can transfer it back. Same with Norway, same with Ireland. We should be putting this in, and I was on a few energy bill committees, know a thing or two about this, because we were looking at DC direct current to offshore platforms when I was at Shell and Statoil. And the sale of our other resources, this and other resources such as oil, gas, water, and clean energy, just to name a few, in an independent Scotland, will help make Scotland's economy one of the richest in Europe. That's what's at stake here. And we, the people of Scotland, will use that for the benefit of the people of Scotland. Whereas England, under English control, it will continue to be used and sold for the benefit of the corporations and those in London. So it's an absolute no-brainer. We've got to get independence, and we've got to make this count. It's eternal. We are a very wealthy nation, and we really need not forget that. Do something about it.
I would only pick you up one point. You said one of the richest countries in Europe. I'd say one of the richest countries in the world.
In the world, yes.
Absolutely. And although for lots of us, I'm not in it to none of us are in it for extra money, but
Right, Roddy's freezing a wee bit, unfortunately.
in Scotland, Alan.
Could you repeat that, Roddy?
Yeah, I said it seems things are heating up a bit in Wales. Let's see if we can get things heating up in Scotland with unity, because it's unity in Wales that's given them the headwind.
Yeah, I mean, it's a perfect opportunity now, not just for Wales and Scotland, but a united Ireland. We have got the 3 nations out of the 4 of the so-called United Kingdom all wanting to send England on their way, so as England could then become an independent nation. We have to have a 3-pronged attack here and all unite with the 3 Celtic nations, if you like, taking on the English Parliament as one. And that's what our Scottish Parliament should be doing, is to organise a joint campaign with the leaders of these organisations in Northern Ireland and in Wales. And when we do that, we will be working to unite the independence movement in Scotland. So as we all fight with one cause and one goal, and that's to get people out to vote and voting for independence, regardless of party or independent that they're going to vote for. It's to get the independence vote out to maximise the numbers, because the numbers are the important issue here. The seats are just a byproduct of that. The numbers of votes that we get is the important part of any election. We have to hit that 50.1%.
As Eva said, the union has never been weaker. Here's just a wee result from a by-election down the road. Again, terrible turnout, but Reform came from nowhere and got 37% of the vote. Labour, their vote is right down. This was as safe Labour seat as you can get, and they've lost it. Now, this is going to cause, we spoke about this last week, Eva, it's going to cause infighting among to take advantage. This is the time.
Sorry, Roddy, Again, like Alan, can you repeat the question?
I think I'm having some internet issues here. I was saying, if ever there was a time with the things are going awry for the union, and it looks as if they're all going to be cutting each other's throats, we need to unite, and we can take tremendous advantage of that position.
Well, we need to take lessons from history. Scotland wins when Scotland is united. Scotland united will never be defeated. The only reform Scotland needs is independence. And Robert Bruce, that far back, all these centuries ago, understood completely that we needed to be a united force to regain our liberty. That's what we need to do now. And the evidence that the English Parliament has never been weaker is there in that poll. People are absolutely sick to the back teeth of the currently elected politicians. Labour promised change, and we did get change insofar as austerity didn't stay the same. It got fully worse in terms of cuts, particularly those planned cuts towards the disabled. You know, how about trying to look after people for a change instead of choosing the weakest, most vulnerable people to kick when they're already down? That's where Labour are nowadays. There's a recent release just within the last few days about how the NHS has reached its limit and there's no more money available for the NHS. So, of course, the self-fulfilling prophecy: criticise the NHS, run it down, make it ripe for privatisation. This is what is on the agenda. And Scotland needs no part of that. We need to assert our sovereignty as a people, as a nation. That's why the application by Liberation Scotland to the UN is so vitally important. It's another strand of the argument. But you create that vision of liberation and independence and self-determination. You create the vision, but you have to turn it into reality at the ballot box. And that's why every single vote for independence is so hugely important. And now, when reform are on the rise, the best thing that John Swinney can do is not to proceed with summits about how to prevent reform, sitting down, breaking bread with unionists. He needs to sit down with the independentistas. But if, as Phil said, the leadership of the SNP have, for whatever reason, abandoned their raison d'etre, they won't come to the table, so it's up to the rest of us to do that. And when I say the rest of us, I mean everybody else in the independence movement. And I mean all the people who are sitting at home watching this. It's all good and well and very much appreciated that you watch and that you tweet and you post on Facebook and TikTok and whatever else. But you've got to get out and do things. You've got to be active. Write to your MSP, write to your MP, chap their door. Demonstrate, go to the marches, go to the rallies, make yourself visible, fly a saltire, stick a sticker in your window saying "Liberate Scotland." Let people know that you believe in independence for our country, because as we say every week, it's a noble cause. But the reason why we want independence for Scotland is so that everybody born in Scotland, coming to Scotland, who wants to live, grow up, work, exist in Scotland, will have the opportunity in an independent country that they don't have when we're a colony. And that is to realise their potential, to have the opportunity to live in a safe, warm home, to be able to heat their home and eat, to be able to be educated and to be cared for when you're weak, vulnerable, unwell, and not able to look after yourself. We're not asking for the earth. We're demanding it because we deserve it.
Here. The clock's beating us. I want to get a few things in, Phil, on that. And, the union, as we say, doesn't work for us. People deny, and even people in our movement, and we know it, deny that we're a colony, and we are. Now, here's one of the things. If we were negotiating trade deals, what would be the number one thing that we would make sure was protected and looked after? Would be whisky. But Keir Starmer, he brought a letter from the King of England, Charlie. He invites Donald to go over. He's trying to get Donald the Open to the Turnberry course. But when they negotiate his trade deal, they excluded whisky. And it's going to stay at 10. It's going to go up to 27% to protect that gut rot in America that they call whiskey. So Scottish whiskey is going to lose out. It's typical colonial treatment of Scotland.
It is, and it comes as no surprise when we look at that the behaviour of that ass kisser, because it was appalling, using the whole King Charles crap. It was we talked about it a lot. It was embarrassing, so cringeworthy, his ass kissing. It was terrible. But bear in mind, this is a $6 billion a year industry that Scotland produces. Our whiskey generates a value, a profit of about $6 billion a year. It's massive, and it's been undermined, and he's doing nothing about it. He doesn't give a damn. He's got other priorities. It shows where his priorities are. So no, and what was said earlier, I completely agree with Eva and Alan. The Celtic nations should join, and we will also form an alliance with Scandinavian countries, because we're like-minded and more democratically socialist than in England. Look at this Reform Party are coming in. England will force reform upon us, whether we like it or not. As in every election, we get what England wants, and until we establish an independent Scotland, it will ever be thus. So we want to form allegiances with our natural allies, the Scandinavians and other Celtic nations, because they're more socialist bent, and hopefully we'll show the good people of England the right way forward. And reform our uber right wing. Remember that the Tories tried to outflank them on the right and failed. The Tories failed to outflank the Reform Party on the right, and if they will, if anything, accelerate the ongoing asset stripping of Scotland. When Reform get in, and they will, they'll asset strip Scotland and the rest of the UK, but especially resource-rich Scotland, including the continued deterioration and destruction of our precious education and health systems. That's on the cards, and unless we stand up and be counted, and this goes out to all the leaders, bang your heads together. Sit down and sort this out for our people, because we're the ones that are suffering here, not you and your cushy wee number. So and we should never let them forget that. And we should hold them to task. And if they don't, and really, I think time's out for SNP. I think we need to destroy the leadership, the political careers of the leadership of the SNP. I don't see any other way, because they won't sell themselves out, because they'll continue to be blackmailed and bought out by the British establishment, and they continue to work for their imperial masters. Well, tough luck. The game's over. Time to cut them out of the equation and take Scotland back for ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, we talk all the time, and again this week we've been talking, Alan, about how they take our electricity, our oil, our gas, our resources. They take all the stuff they export and they put it onto the books in England. And the one thing we mentioned earlier that they're now looking to take down is water. The only thing they can't produce in England and take the jobs down there is whiskey, because they don't have the water. But if they take the water, folks, they'll take that as well, believe you me. Am I right?
They've been after our water for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one of the last referendums that we had was Strathclyde, where they tried to privatise our water.
Yeah.
And Strathclyde, a local council, didn't ask permission. They held a referendum. You listening, John? So if the local council can do it, I'm sure as hell the country can do it. But water is it's life itself. We cannot do anything without water. It's so important to our nation, for our crops, for our bodies. We cannot allow it to be privatised or taken down south, because they cannot look after their own stuff. I'm sick and tired of being the ones who are having to look after the English while they just shaft us right, left and centre.
Absolutely.
And Scots have got to get a backbone, grow a pair of balls, because what they are doing is not only taking our water and our resources, they're taking your dignity. That's what they're doing, taking your dignity, and it's time to fight and get it back. I mean, the trade deal in America also, should be reminded, is only the same trade deal that we had before the tariffs went on. It's the Biden trade deal. Because Trump wants to go a lot further, and that includes with the insurance-based health service here. And I keep saying it, Reform are going to hand it over to them on a silver platter. That's what Farage is all about. And he's great friends with Donald Trump. So if you want to keep the health service under our control, You know what to do in 2026.
Yeah. Everything points to that, folks. Everything points to that. Another thing that happened this week, and the aftermath of the Supreme Court ruling on what the definition of a woman, etc., Eva, they eventually caught up with the despot to ask her opinion. I have no need to apologise, said Nicola Sturgeon to the people of the women of Scotland. I am right. I am always right. The Supreme Court is wrong, and it's the poor trans women, or men, if you prefer, Eva, who are going to suffer. I will apologise for nothing. She has zero self-awareness.
I disagree. I think she's got a lot of self-awareness. I think that's in part why we are where we are, because she loves herself so much and she believes that she is always right. So she's very well aware of what she says and what she means. She also knows that she's talking shite, quite frankly. So does the rest of the world. And we've always known that since this gender recognition reform, self-identification was first mooted. And it's really unfortunate because she's created problems across the board in every public agency, every public body, and in places as important and significant to our society as schools and hospitals and prisons. I mean, you don't get much more important than how you look after children at school. And our self-identification process jeopardised their safety, jeopardised their well-being, jeopardised their welfare, jeopardised their best interests. All words that we use in the law and in the Children's Scotland Act and the Children's Hearing Scotland Act 2011, we use these words all the time. And all the institutions that look after children and have regard to children's needs, welfare and interests have been vilified if they were described as gender critical, when gender critical just means telling the truth. They've been applauded for being deluded and for allowing children to self-identify out of their sex into the gender they choose. So she shouldn't just be apologising to the women like me that she called bigots and transphobes and she told us our views were not valid, when it turns out we were right all along. She should be apologising to the children who've been put on puberty blockers. She should be apologising to the adults and children who have been bullied, sacked, harassed, reported, disciplined for refusing to accept that you cannot change your sex and for refusing to accept that boys or men get into girls' or women's single-sex spaces. She owes an apology to most of the population of Scotland in that regard, but certainly owes a massive apology to those who are doing without in Scotland because there is no money left, as millions have been spent on these absolutely deluded, demented policies in charities, in public bodies and elsewhere. And it is eye-watering to consider the amount that's going to be paid out in compensation for all those people who now have a claim because they had to share a space with somebody who self-identified out of their sex as the result of Sturgeon's reign and what she did. So I look forward very much to her book coming out. Apparently there's going to be a couple of new added chapters at the end where she, with a law degree, a former lawyer, will explain exactly how and where the Supreme Court, which includes women on the bench, got it wrong and where she's right.
Oh, wonderful to be that correct all the time. Folks, the clocks is always has beaten us. But I would just say to you, tomorrow and Monday, look out. The first 10 Liberate Scotland candidates will be announced on Monday. And there will be a continuing candidates coming forward. We're speaking to people all over. The first 10 are ready to be named, and the constituencies they're going to fight and the regional lists they're going to be on. Now, if you live in those regions and in those constituencies, we want to hear from you. Because as Eva was telling you quite eloquently earlier, we can do it. We can give you the opportunity, but we need help to pull it over the line. We need people to knock on the doors. We need people to deliver leaflets. We need people to man the street stalls. We need people to talk to the people at the bus stop and at the school gate and get people voting for this. We can only do so much, but if you don't join in, then you've heard what will happen. Your electricity will go, your water will go, the whisky will, everything will go, and your life will not get better. So, it's up to you folks. Until we see you and yours, take care.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.